About 90% of the nation's elderly want to remain at home as they continue aging. Today's guest will offer information and resources available to help the elderly do just that. She is Maria Tad, medical writer and author of the book, Happiness is Growing Old at Home. Discover new ways to help your aging parent remain independent. Talk a little bit about your book. It's entitled Happiness is Growing Old at Home. This book is really for adult children to give them some guidance and assistance in helping to help their aging parents.
It is, and the target audience actually includes the elders themselves. Not all elders have children. And
Right.
So for the elders who don't have children and want to find out how they can remain independent longer, the book offers them a lot of tips and advice. And it's also for young adults who have grandparents, perhaps, whose parents may be too busy. You know, it's that sandwich generation kind of thing. And they may be of assistance to an aging parent, to an aging grandparent. So the market is actually quite large because, you know, nearly everyone seems to, as an adult or as a young adult, has an aging grandparent or an aging parent.
Right, and if we're fortunate enough to live long enough, then we'll all be aging hopefully in our own homes at some point.
Yes, and you know, and Americans are living longer. So as we live longer, we need to learn how to live better. And that's another aspect of this book, is to help people live better lives.
As you mentioned, you have firsthand knowledge of helping aging parents. You talk a lot and you base a lot of this book on your experience with your mother, caring for your aging mother from a distance, which creates a whole nother set of challenges. Talk a little bit about your personal experience.
Well, I think whenever you're caring for an aging parent, clearly distance creates another level of complexity. If, you know, mom's down the street, you can just get there if there's a crisis within minutes. But, you know, many people, I can't remember the exact statistic, but something like 1/3 of adult children have aging parents that live 750 miles away from them or greater. And my mother was 750 miles away. And so, you know, when you have a crisis, it takes 24 hours to get there because you have to make plans to go. But with all aging parents, there are issues that come up, such as driving. How do you talk to your parent about when is it time to put those keys aside? And that's a very difficult thing for people who know that they're going to lose their independence when they no longer can drive. The other very important thing is to get to know your parents' physicians, because medical care becomes much more critical as they age because they have many more issues. And no matter where you live, if you can schedule your visits to coincide with medical appointments and get to meet physicians personally, then when you call them, you have some kind of relationship already. And helping a parent, you know, most parents are not great historians as they age, so they may not be giving the doctor accurate information as to what's really going on, and they also may not be taking in the advice that's being given to them about what they need to do. So it's very helpful for an elderly patient or parent to have an advocate with them, or just somebody who can take notes, who can help them remember what the instructions were. And then, of course, helping them with their medications to make sure that they're taking their medications, that they're taking the medications properly. All of that becomes very important as a parent ages. There's a statistic that older seniors are taking anywhere between 8 and 12 prescription drugs. And in my book, I actually have an example of how to keep track of all the medications. It's like a medication log, so that if there's a brand name versus a generic name, that the parent doesn't get confused.
Right, and that's very important to keep track of all those things and to have that assistance. But how do you have that initial conversation with your aging parent? Because I can imagine it can be quite uncomfortable, to say the least.
It is, and I think for different parents it's sort of a different kind of conversation. You know, there's some parents that just are very stubborn about wanting to maintain their independence. I mean, almost all elderly parents, at least of my friends, adamantly don't want to move. They all want to stay at home. And so sometimes it helps to have just a heart-to-heart talk about, you know, what is it that they want for themselves as they age, and what can they afford. and what makes most sense. Does it make sense for them to move closer to the child? Does it not make sense to move closer to the child, to the adult child? It really varies. And I think the most difficult conversation really is around driving.
I can remember my great-grandfather driving well into his 90s, and that was an adventure for the person in the car and people around and outside on the highway. How do you, I guess, get that aging parent to relinquish those driving privileges? Because that's something that a lot of families are facing right now.
Well, one way is you can tell them that if they have an accident and it's their fault and somebody sues them, they could lose all of their resources.
Which is true, right.
It is true. And that sometimes scares them into saying, you're right. I mean, this actually just happened with the mother of a friend of mine who had an accident and had been told not to drive already. And when you've been told not to drive and then you're driving anyway, you're really putting yourself in jeopardy. And most aging parents really fear that if they lost their finances and their support, what would they do? So I think that's one way, sort of the fear factor, which may not be the kindest way to go about it, but sometimes you really have to light that fire and find something that's going to strike a chord.
I want to talk a little bit about how to help elders remain healthy, because the Centers for Disease Control estimates that there are several that falls are the leading cause of injury deaths in people ages 65 and older. The National Osteoporosis Association is saying that about 300,000 people suffer hip fractures each year. We know those are caused as a result of falls. So given these high numbers, how do you keep the elderly from falling? There are ways that they can keep themselves healthy and prevent those falls.
There are 4 areas that you need to look at. One is the environment. And there are many things you can do in the home to make it safer and to reduce the risk of falling. One is get rid of all throw rugs, because that's a very easy thing for somebody to slip on a throw rug and then they fall. Another is to tack down carpet that might be sort of have a bit of a tripping hazard, to make sure that there are no tripping hazards around the carpet. Electrical cords to a lamp or to a space heater, make sure that they're tucked away so that they don't pose a tripping hazard. You need to light the stairwells in such a way that the parent can actually see where they're walking, particularly at night, and having night lights around. Grab bars in the bathroom. So those are all like things that you can do to modify a house to help reduce tripping hazards. The other thing, of course, is make sure that your parent has had a vision test, because as the eyes age, vision also sort of gets reduced a bit, and you might have cataracts and you might not be seeing things as clearly as you had seen them before. So that's one area. Another area is, of course, diet. We know that everyone talks about calcium in terms of bone strength, but you can't absorb calcium without vitamin D. And vitamin D has become sort of the new buzz vitamin. Everybody thinks that vitamin D is, the best thing since sliced bread, which it is, because it not only helps absorb calcium, but it helps fight infection. It provides some protection for certain cardiovascular diseases. They're discovering that vitamin D helps a whole host of issues. Now, there's a condition called osteomalacia, which is softening of the bone, which is directly related to a vitamin D deficiency. And the interesting thing is that almost everybody has some kind of deficiency in vitamin D, with the elderly having even more deficiencies than a younger person, because they don't tend to be outside so much. And the other thing for helping to prevent falls is exercise. Now, clearly, when we're younger, if we're doing some weight-bearing exercises, that helps with bone strengthening. And as we age, not only does osteoporosis, raise its ugly head, but there's also some muscle loss, and that's just a natural part of aging, that there's muscle loss in terms of mass as well as in strength. So, you move it or lose it. And if you don't move, your joints get stiff, your muscles become weak. And so there are particular exercises that studies have shown help not only strengthen the muscles, but help with balance. And those exercises are Tai Chi, yoga, and Pilates.